Lou. All right. Chip Queso and Kerry Jackson with Won't Shut Up and Skate. We're trying this again. We fooled the first time. We are at the North Skate Park of Houston here for the memorial for Frank Gardner and for Wild Bill from Pro Design. And we are joined here by Mr. Dennis Eppinette, builder and owner of the Skate Park of Houston. Hey, Dennis.
What's happening?
Thanks for making some time and sitting down with us, man.
Yeah, we went through some great questions. We're going to try to duplicate that, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Do we want to do a test? Houston Skate Park, talking to Dennis Eppinette. We'll have to go back through some of this. Your parents owned Texas Twister, and that was back in the
1978, 1979, and it closed in 1980.
1980.
And was that concrete, ramps, a little of both? What was it?
It was mainly concrete, and there was a couple of quarter pipes there. And sometime around later 1979, they did add that all steel half pipe that never got finished. But that was the first exposure of metal to the skateboarding world that I know of back then.
Okay, and so we talked a little bit out. We'll come back to it since this is a fresh take. The metal. So at that park, which had a lot of concrete, they had a literal half of a pipe that you welded coping on top of. No flat bottom, nothing. Rusty. It's hot as a frying pan.
I imagine it was, and I never really skated it when it was out in the sun. And as far as me building, I never built any of that first pipe that Twister had put up.
Okay, you didn't build any of that, but then you started the Skate Park of Houston after the property had closed or whatever, your parents owned the property, and you started it in 85, right?
Correct.
And we were jump back. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you started that with the first ramp was the Kahuna. That was what you started with?
Right. That was the first one that I built.
That's a hell of a way to come out of the gate, man.
10 foot.
12 foot.
12 foot. I'm sorry. 10 foot transition. 12 foot or 12 foot total. Go back to the question about the transitions on that.
Okay. Well, I'll let you explain. You said you figured out like a formula, right? Of tranny to vert to flat to figure out, like, how did you come up with the dimensions for the Kahuna? What made you decide to go that big with the radius?
From what I had heard about half pipes back during that time, 83 and 84, everybody was using 8-foot transitions, maybe a 9. And I don't know what the clown ramp had up in Dallas, but it was close to a 9. But I figured, let me figure out these dimensions and I can probably build something a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, and make it where it's fun to skate on.
Were y'all trying to one up Dallas?
I didn't really find out about Dallas, Melvin's place, until maybe 1986. I didn't even know it was there. I heard some of the P gang talk about the clown ramp in Dallas.
Well, we interviewed Jeff Newton. He talks about how he came down and then you guys got together to start the Shut Up and Skate, and there's some history to that. But back to that original skate park of Houston, you had the Kahuna, and then somehow you figured out that I could build these variety of sizes of ramps so that not every kid could obviously ride the Kahuna. So they had a chance to kind of build their way up. And I don't know if that's even something you planned for. You just wanted more people to show up.
Well, I needed, more people show up for sure. But to do that, you needed more ramps. It's just, I didn't have the funds to build 8 or 10 ramps and open up like a grand opening in the beginning, like what I wanted. So I had to start out with one ramp. And if I made a good, spectacular ramp to do major pro events and AM events, then that would be the best starting point that I could have right there.
Well, and that brings us into what we've talked about, and that is that was integral in changing skateboarding, because not only the size of the ramp and the amount of airs. We talked about Christian Hosoi doing the rocket air. We talked about Chris Miller doing the lean air, crossbone, and a lot more than that.
Let's pause on that for a minute since we're trying to capture this. You were saying, like, you saw Hosoi there, and he was telling you how much he liked the ramp. He could get bigger airs, and it gave him enough hang time to where he basically says he invented the rocket air at your park because he was in the air for so much longer. He was like, oh, what if I tried this?
Right. Yeah. Well, all the good pro skaters, they would love something like that. And they did, because it helped the advertising and the marketing take back all the pictures to their companies. It goes in the magazines, sales go up, and you get the idea.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember those ads in the magazines being a kid, and I'm like, hey, I know where that is. That's here in Houston. I can go there. I can go skate that. And then I'd get there and I'm like, oh, that's big. That's really big. I remember the first time before I ever tail dropped, I actually rolled in the channel, which was probably worse because you go really, really fast. And I believe it was you. Did you roll in on a motorcycle on the ramp?
No, that was Cliff.
That was Cliff? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember somebody rolling in on a motorcycle. That was crazy.
Well, rolling in, on the motorcycle.
You went down the roll-in channel.
Oh, no.
On a motorcycle.
I don't believe I seen that. Or if I did, I don't remember
I
it.
think it was a little enduro bike, but still, that was crazy.
You also have the shop, and that was a place where you could get more money coming in and help you build more things in the shop. But what was it that you mentioned about Powell and Vision?
Powell and Vision would not sell to me directly. They did not believe my business was a official place of business just because it didn't have a storefront like everything in the malls or the strip centers.
Right.
And just because I did not put 50 grand or more into just a skate shop, they didn't want to sell to me.
Yeah, and that was the Vision Streetwear days and all the big time. They wanted it to be something like that. Otherwise, I guess the money went to the mall shops or something like that.
That blows my mind though, because that was the most legit. That was the most legit place. It was the skate
Most
park.
important thing, all of the places in California, they really hated it that I was in Texas because now they had to spend a lot of their resources to come down here and show what they have, skater wise and etc.
Right. Well, and it's because of the Skatepark of Houston. When the pros came down, they realized, oh shit, not only do they have rad skaters, they're doing tricks and they're getting more time in the air, all the things that were coming out of it. And let's not even talk about the Brian Pennington, Dave Nielsen, Chris Gentry's coming up. This was still before all that. Troy Chasen is around here somewhere, I don't know, but man, I'll tell you what, it definitely changed the trajectory, and they had to keep up with it, but they didn't want to spend the money in Texas. But yet you were helping build something big in Texas. So that's a cool thing. So
another way, I mean, we were just talking about how the vert ramps really progressed vert skating. And then you had mentioned earlier that your park was the first park I ever saw that had a street area. And it seemed like every year you added something and you made it bigger and you changed the ramps a little bit. And then you built the first spine ramp I ever saw. You built the first pyramid I ever saw. And we'd get inspired and go try to build stuff in our little cul-de-sacs and at home, copying the stuff you did. And then we'd go back to the park and be like, oh, we got to make the angle more like this. Like, he's building it right. We don't know what we're doing. But that's what inspired me to get into building, was seeing the stuff you did. I'd walk underneath the ramps and like count the 2x4s and everything. It was a lesson.
Were you keeping up with the times on purpose, or you just wanted to change it up to keep it fresh?
Keeping it fresh, keep changing everything so people did not get bored with it. That's very easy to do in some sports. Unless you have a large variety, then you've got something for everybody, and you really don't need to change that much. You might add on something or change something, in the future if it's the least skated park, in your park. It's just a touch and go deal, and I had to kind of think of everything possible, because having an outdoor business in Houston and dealing with all of everything else I had to deal with, there had to be some magical solution to keep people interested and coming back.
Yeah, and even not even thinking about that in changing the Houston skate park, getting people to come back to the park. Houston had a thriving downtown skate scene already, but I also thought it was pretty integral that you found a way to build the street cart, and you always had flow because there was always transition or something to get you back into the park. One of the things we talk about in skate park design now is how do you get back to where you go? And I don't know if you did that on purpose, but you certainly did something there that was special.
Yeah, there was only so much room for the street area. It was really too small for a good street area, but I just built what would work for that size of area and make it exciting and go from there.
There you go. Let's take a quick break about the street area, but I want to back up. Because in order to make the street area happen at one point, you also had to tear down the Chiquita ramp. And let's talk about the Chiquita ramp. The Chiquita ramp was 8-foot transition with 11 inches of vert or 9 inches of vert. It was just under 9. Does that sound right?
No, it had full 1 foot.
1 foot. So it was, and I think I remember you saying 1 foot was the minimal amount of space that you could go from transition to your wheels to be able to get vert. Do you remember that?
Not really. There's no set rule on vertical and transition to the amount. You can have too much vertical,
sure,
but there's always that question where everybody will talk about if a ramp does not have enough vertical.
At the time, though, you were talking about a ramp that was it 24 or 28? You remember?
And
Width.
I believe it was 24.
24. And people who were very tall, like Jeff Phillips and other skaters, were able to skate that thing and do airs that were at least chest high. Which was amazing for that ramp. But I want to talk about the most famous thing about that ramp, and that's the coping. I'm sure, I don't know if you know the tales of everybody talking about the pitted steel coping. Did you have any philosophy on how you chose the coping pieces?
Those I found in a salvage yard. It's just old 2-inch drill stem. That's what that stuff gets very rusty. And I said, wow, I'm going to try this because it looks and will probably feel like concrete coping.
And that's what everybody says about it to this day. They're like, I don't like steel coping unless it's that oil pipe coping that's all pitted. That feels like grinding real pool coping. I'm like, yeah, it does.
Yeah, and to this day, when we talk in the circles, it is highly regarded as the best coping that anyone has ever skated. So, but that's when then you tore that down. What happened exactly to go from metal to concrete of the Kahuna that ended the demise of the Kahuna?
Oh, the flat bottom?
The flat bottom, it rotted out first. That wood was not treated. I had to build that ramp shotgun style. It had to go up as quick as possible because the upcoming contest for it,
Yeah.
the Surfhouse Cedar Hill Classic, is what I believe was called back then.
Was that before the red ramp?
That was before.
That was
set up in skate of
before.
85.
Yeah, that was the August 4th contest back in 1985.
85.
Yeah.
So that's a good timestamp. But then you went to the concrete flat bottom, and then everybody was like not happy with it.
I had to put that in. It was an emergency fix.
Yeah, right.
Funds were low. In order to fix that ramp right, I would have to tear down the complete ramp and start over.
How much were otter pops? 25 cents?
They might have been at one time.
How many otter pops do you think you sold at the Skatepark of Houston? Thousands.
I have no idea.
What was better, getting the money off that or having to clean up otter pop wrappers all over the fucking park?
Probably neither one.
So I want to ask, some of the contests there were just huge,
Epic
events.
cars down the road.
Yeah. And the one that really stands out in my mind is the one on the hurricane ramp when you had built that weird soundproofing wall or whatever around the side.
Steve Schneer naked.
Steve Schneer got naked, put a sock on his dick and did a naked ho-ho and tried to carve the wall. Were you just like thinking like, God damn, I'm going to go to jail tonight, aren't I? Like, or were you just like, yeah, let's get it?
Nope, wasn't worried about that. Cops have been out there many times. They were wild and amazed.
You had a decent relationship with the authorities at that point?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Good. Because sometimes I was a little concerned. I was like, man, I hope nothing bad happens to this place because I really love it here.
Yeah, that wall behind the hurricane was built for the banners.
For the banners, yeah, okay, that made sense.
And it blocked the view from the adjacent parking lot in behind the park. So
no looky-loos.
So all the hoodlums could not.
Wait, are you saying that there's several people who used to park at the grocery store back there and come in and never go to the pro shop and try to circumvent paying to get in?
There's no telling. There probably was.
Oh yeah, there was. They tried to teach me. I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
The whole time during those years, and at one point I was lucky to be a team manager, if you will. I had a car, I was responsible, and we go on these river trips and you do the paddle rats and do all that crazy stuff. What was more fun, was going on the paddle rat trips and doing all the stuff with all the skaters, or was it actually the events and the contests and just the general park?
They all had it was more fun than the other one at certain times. It was why we returned. It's why I did Lou's crazy vacations and did all the snowboarding trips.
Yeah, the snowboarding trips.
Hey, talk about the paddle wrap for a minute for people who don't know what that is. Explain what this contraption was.
Well, he went through several versions, but it's a inner tube with straps of a frame on top, and that frame then on either side had a post that then had a paddle attached to it, a literal paddle. You
like a paddle wheel, like a riverboat would
and
have.
You could go either direction, etc.
And crank them with your hands.
Yes, and this man,
you made those.
But here's the thing: he had 10 different variations. He tried a ton of different materials, and things broke and whatever. Yep. And then he finally made some with metal, which I still own 2 of them. And we would go down to New Braunfels. He would take us in a trailer with 8 or 10 of us, and we looked like Harley Davidson's dudes on paddle rats in the river. Right. Drinking, debauchery, being loud.
That also reminds me, what was the connection between Titties, flip-flops, and all the skaters at the park? Didn't Troy work for them?
Ken worked for them.
Troy and Ken, I believe.
Because that's the only place I ever saw skaters wearing flip-flops, but they were always
I've seen their flip-flops in just about all the stores throughout Houston.
But I wasn't used to seeing. I didn't think. Oh no. I didn't think that skaters and flip-flops mixed, and then I'd go to Orange Grove, and whenever people were done skating, take off their stinky ass skate shoes, and they put on these flip-flops that were like this. They're so thick, and they were like, like a beer koozie on your feet. And I was like, what are those? Like Titties.
Well, Dennis, you had the Widowmaker, the Kahuna, the Chiquita, the Hurricane,
the Ninja
Ramp. I don't know what the indoor ramp was called, but there was an indoor ramp.
The spine
ramp, which had plexiglass on it. But I want to ask about, there were only 2 or 3 times that at the end of the evening, I'd look over at the other transition on the Chiquita, and here would be this stature of a man, you dropping in and do a full-on 30-second, 5-10-second stalled invert, frontside airs. You skated rad, but you didn't skate much. Why?
Well, when you're younger, you are young and rubberish. If you fall, you get up and do it again.
That's right.
No, can't do that anymore.
But you had a bag of tricks. You rode BMX bike on it, and you skated vert.
No, just skating. No.
Did you race BMX?
I did for a little while.
Cruiser style. Okay.
Oh, I wanted to ask. I remember when the ditch suddenly appeared there, and there was all these rumors like, oh yeah, he built a ditch. No, it was there. He dug it up. What's the story behind the ditch?
The top part of it was bulldozed, the bottom and the drain was still intact. So I figured I could have a concrete contractor recoat that and do a little bit better job and make something else to skate. For all the people that didn't really approve of the metal, I had at least some concrete there.
And that was the first concrete skateboarding thing I ever got to ride that was made for skateboarding, and I thought it was super cool. I'd ridden ditches and stuff, but that was the first actual concrete feature at a skate park.
Yep.
And that set all my expectations for everything after that, so I had pretty high standards because that thing was fun. That was really cool.
Also famously known for being backflipped into off the roof by Javante Taylor. Same contest that what's his name? 180 over the bank. Kareem Campbell did the 180 over the bank, the big tall bank that you had behind the ninja ramp and all that stuff.
Yeah. A lot of crazy stuff went down at that place.
Dennis Eppinette, do you remember that back in the day that you used to go to restaurants and we go to all you can eat breakfast and you'd come back from the all you ate buffet and all you had was sausage and bacon? Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
You remember that? You also had a card that said why you don't tip people.
That I don't remember.
You don't remember that? I also saw you and eat almost a whole can of Spanish spicy peanuts all in one sitting.
That was probably, and is probably true.
And you liked frozen vegetables and you ate sandwiches in different parts. Am I just bringing up what stuff or is that all true?
Still eat frozen vegetables. They're great.
Hey, they're fresh. They're right now.
The best snack in the world.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
A whole bag's not even $1.
Dennis, when you look back on this, you really do get a lot of claim and a lot of props for what you did for Texas skateboarding. And all you did was build stuff for people, try to make a business out of it and get crazy because you were building other stuff, your swamp crawlers and all that kind of stuff. Right. But when you look back or you think back on that, do you have anything inside you look back, that was cool, or I'm glad I did it, or do you have anything kind of you reflect on?
Yeah, there was so much there and so much going on. I would have to sit down for a year and write down everything and go through it again and again and again to come up with what was better, what was best, and what I should not have done.
Sure. You were definitely integral. If you look at our friend over at Southside Skate Park now, he took from you, I'm sure. He changes his indoor skate park quite often, at least the street area, changed it up. And I think that's a reflection of what you did back in the day. So that's kind of a cool.
Yeah, he said he got to keep it fresh.
Kind of thing. And, and the fact that metal ramps and the big transitions and all the things you did is so pretty cool. Most of us joke about the times when we were all drinking and you were feeding out Fast Freddy's, which was your margarita Everclear and lime juice concoction to get people like young Mike Crum drunk and etc.
I think I got that idea. Who showed me that first? It might have been Brian Pennington or somebody else that told me about that.
About Fast Freddy's? Right. Brian Pennington is attributed for getting lots of minor Skatepark of Houston for Fast Freddy's. And also, you said earlier that Todd Prince is attributed with naming the Kahuna?
Yeah, he was the one that mentioned that name first.
Where was the hurricane meant?
No, this was back in '85.
No. When was how was the hurricane named? Hurricane Ramp.
I gave it that name because I built it in hurricane season. And there was a major hurricane in the Gulf that was supposed to come up and
you were worried it was going to kill you.
Yeah. So it was named the Hurricane Ramp. Nobody else suggested a different name. I would accept any other name and considered. So
it was perfect.
Well, since we're out here celebrating Wild Bill and Frank, you got anything to say about Wild Bill, his craziness, his being around the park all the time, talking too much? You got anything for Bill?
He was a unique individual. No copies there. I tell you what, he did everything the way he could do it, and hopefully, it turned out the best for him. Now we did not have the benefit of computers back then, so shipping was slow and all the kind of stuff where now would be a total just a breeze to get it done. So that probably hurt his business a lot.
Sure, he was an odd carrier. And Frank spent a lot of time helping you build ramps and around the park.
He did a lot of work there. It's hard for me to remember everything, but yeah, so many people helped me with so many different things. It was, just too much, right? For me to remember. It was just something, that it got everything through the day, and tomorrow was the next day, and so everything was continued.
Dennis Eppinette used to call me every once in a while. Again, I wasn't a partying like Chasen and Ken and all those guys. I was a little bit younger and had a car and I was going to college. And Dennis Eppinette would call me and he'd get his 3-wheelers. He had 3-wheelers, which could roll over all the time. And we'd go out in the 3-wheelers and he'd have packed some ice cold beers. And sometimes there was a group of us and sometimes it was just Dennis and I. And we'd be cruising around. We'd stop and like, what's up? Shotgun. Like, shotgun up here. And keep on going. And I remember all those times, that and the paddle rats and all the other stuff, because you basically were a babysitter kind of the Skatepark of Houston was a place where people got dropped off at.
Cheapest babysitter in town.
It was.
My 10-year sentence is over.
It was also a truancy magnet because
Yeah.
people would cut school and just go to the skate park and like, cops are never going to look for us here.
Well, Dennis, we'll cut this off.
Yeah.
We appreciate you taking some time. You said you didn't have very many good answers, but you are really important. We appreciate you. See, you've always been a good friend, and we appreciate that. But what you did for Texas skateboarding and the Skatepark of Houston, you were acclaimed for being part of that early Texas culture that branched not only the vert scene and how that exploded, but also what you did for the rising street scene in Texas and all that. So we're very stoked and cool. You can sit down with us a little time for us, and we wish you the best, man. You're great. We appreciate it.
And I personally want to thank you for making that skate park because that was formative in my life. I met some of my best friends to this day at your park, and I had some of the best times of my life there. And I saw some of the most amazing skateboarding I've ever seen in my whole life happen at your park. Thank you for doing that. It also is what inspired me to learn how to build ramps, and I've done that professionally for 20 years. So you set me on part of my career path as well. Thank you for that and everything you did for skateboarding, man.
That's good. Yep. Yeah, if it wasn't for me, we would not be sitting here right now.
Maybe not.
Yeah, this park might not exist.
And nationwide,
Yeah.
parks like this
Yeah.
would not be around.
I think that's true.
It took the state of Texas. They've watched what I was doing and said, man, if we could get insurance to, work with us.
Yep.
But the state of Texas figured out, well, we can open these and let everybody know the law has changed.
Yeah.
You go out here and hurt yourself,
That's on
your
you.
responsibility.
Yeah. If that had happened earlier, God, that would have probably been a huge weight off of your shoulders with a private park, huh?
And it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if that would have happened, things would have been different.
Yeah, for sure.
There's certain things, there's got to be a starting point. And it's like the very first people that sailed over here on ships and discovered and created this country, they didn't have insurance back then.
No.
And they were taking a huge gamble. They'd lose their life, ship problem or whatever. But no, there's a starting point for everything.
Dennis Eppinette was
You're
a
a true
conquistador.
Pioneer.
Pioneer. Dennis Eppinette, the pioneer. All right, let's wind it down.
Thanks so much, Dennis. Thanks for
Thank you,
taking your time,
Dennis.
man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything last to say today? Didn't go get a fast Freddy? Leave me alone.
No, can't do that.
Thanks. Dennis Eppinette, y'all. Won't
Thanks,
show up and skate. See you around.